Hi, thank you so much for tuning in to the Gamers at the End of the World podcast. I'm your host, Ty Justice.
And I'm co-host JCPR.
And today we have a very special guest. It is not going to be Retro Butter again. This time it's going to be the incomparable Gabe. And he is our Atari expert. Now, we're going to start off with a little bit of the news again, and since Nintendo is still making the waves, we're going to start off by talking a little bit about how they're raising prices on their older consoles, not the new one.
Which makes total sense.
Right? And remember, guys, we are talking with experts from the field of retro gaming, used games, and, we're going to start off, I want to pass that on to you and tell me what you think about that.
I think it is such a disgrace.
Because we're talking about Switch 1 and Switch Lites. They're all going to go up in price because of tariffs.
It is kick you to the crotch, stab you in the neck, horrible.
Right.
It's absurd. And it's funny they announced this price hike and they go through with it. Because recently as well, Doug Bowser, the CEO, said, or he was questioned rather, what about those who can't afford the Switch 2? Well, they still have the other models available. So you have the other models available, but you're not keeping that price.
Right.
Like, that is absurd. That is so anti-consumer, man.
No, I completely agree with you. And I just think it's so nearsighted because, let's face it, that was tried with Xbox recently. Once the Switch 2 was going to come out and announce their prices, they preemptively raised their prices on systems that already didn't sell. And it just seems like bad business.
Horrible.
But how about you, Gabe? What do you think about it?
It's one of those, I guess you can call it cash grabs. But, I mean, from what I've heard on one of these other gaming channels is that, I guess, to counter that, PlayStation was going to drop the pricing on their games. Yeah. Since Nintendo wants to charge $90, they're going to charge less, which would give them a bigger market.
Right.
Which is really smart.
Yeah, that's brilliant. You're going to raise your prices? You're going to raise the standard for all gaming? Okay, boom!
Yeah. and you got to think, is that like purely based off of the quality and like the effort they're putting into their games, or is it just to compete?
Yeah, because that's a great way to compete. I mean, in my opinion, I think we're kind of on the same page when we say that, them dropping the prices like that is consumer friendly, of course. I mean, it's obvious that it is. We all want to pay less.
Oh, of course.
But when you're not offering anything new and other companies are like, well, we're just going to raise our prices because we can. And let's remember who does that. Disney. Because remember, and this isn't to knock Disney, this is basic economics, but it's basically trickle-down economics at its finest. Because Disney a few years ago raised its prices, and when they asked why, because Disney is not exactly struggling, they're a very successful company, they basically said, because we can. And it's up to us, and we're going to do that. So it's that's why I say Nintendo is the Disney of gaming. Right. They really have that same kind of mentality, and with their hiking their other consoles, I mean the prices of their older consoles, because let's face it, I think they're doing that because the Switch 2 isn't selling like they thought it would. I'm not saying it's not selling. I'm not saying it's not selling well in certain markets for the first quarter. Let's remember this is still part of the first quarter for them. But it's still, I don't think it's reaching numbers like they thought it would, and I think because of that, they're panicking in a way that's, maybe not obvious to all of us, but they're like, oh yeah, no, we're going to raise our prices. And, Xbox did it. And it was just kind of, I kind of think they almost do it in a way so people remember that they're still around. You're like, oh yeah, hey, we're going to raise our prices too.
Kind of like just an attention grabber in a sense, like a clickbait almost.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because nobody's really paying attention to them. You guys have Xboxes in there for a long time. And what's the best Xbox you guys have that sells the most? The 360. Am I wrong? Like, or does it sell really well?
360
it sells really good, but it depends. The only problem is the whole backwards compatibility.
Right.
That's where they get into issues where customers ask us, hey, does this work on the Xbox One? And the only thing is they have to do the research and go online and look at the list, because I can't remember. I mean, how many games are there in their library? I can't remember every single game that's going to work.
Right, but it's a majority of their stuff, right? Isn't the majority of like their older stuff works on like the
I'd
newer stuff?
say-
I don't think not all, but a good amount.
I'd say it's a pretty low amount for like original Xbox 360. It's about like 50% around there.
Really?
Xbox One all playable, Series X all playable.
Yeah,
yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that kind of blows my mind because why would some games? I mean, is it have to do with licensing or is it just basic compatibility?
I mean, you would assume it's licensing, but then there's the announcement they made recently that their newest, latest, and what seems like their last console that they're coming out with is fully backwards compatible. Why couldn't you do that in the first place?
Right, and PlayStation hasn't done that since the PS3,
But if
the first one.
if they're struggling financial, you got to remember that some games like Gears of War is probably going to come out to PS5. Some
Yeah.
other Halo,
Yeah.
the exclusives are coming out to the PlayStation, and I guess it's just to generate revenue. But since those games are so old, like what's going to make gamers go back to those games? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, the sales might not hit the mark at that point.
Maybe not, but I think in general, because 360 has a certain edge when it comes to nostalgia because of the age of the gamers. I think when the console came out, this is just my opinion, but it had such a core, it had such an effect on them and myself. You know, I love those games. Left 4 Dead. I always talk about Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, the Gears of War games, and I think by doing that, by giving PlayStation their best, because Xbox 360 did have a great library. I think it's an attention thing for them, and not because they're just like, ooh, look at us, but they're like, hey, remember us. We still got good stuff, because a lot of times people have become so desensitized to all the amazing graphics that are out there. And let's face it, modern games are amazing. They have some beautiful graphics, and they're very complex and all that, but they're not always story heavy. That's the thing. Something may look pretty and, it looks great to play, but I mean, you're playing it for a while going, this is kind of dumb, this is kind of dull, or you get bored. It's just not speaking to you the way that 360 games spoke to the players when that system came out. So I think they're just trying to get people to remember, hey, we were great, and here, don't forget why. And I think by doing the cross-platforming with PlayStation, like Gabe was saying, they're doing that. And I think what they're trying to do with that, is give PlayStation their best. So again, it'll rekindle, and let's face it, if they do well with that and PlayStation's like, yeah, no, this did well, give us more of your games, that'll give Xbox extra life. Just like what they're doing with the Rogue Ally Xbox brand. Yeah. They're trying to collaborate with all these different systems because, look, they don't want to go out like Atari. They don't want to go out like Sega necessarily. I mean, Sega just went fully into the games, but, I think they want to just try to stay afloat, and which I think is smart. I mean, it's right. A desperate move in a way, but, they're Microsoft. They're not going to go out of business, because they've got other things. But, I mean, their gaming division, for sure, needs that little bit of boost.
I know exactly what you mean. It seems like recently it's just a more of an emphasis on titles, really, rather than what system you're playing them on.
No,
I feel.
I don't think anybody cares anymore because it's not about like whose graphics are the best.
Yeah,
like, it can go either way.
But on gaming, the only problem is that executives are not gamers.
Right. It's true.
They buried so many really good games that they're like, we're not gonna, continue with development. And some of these games looked amazing.
Yeah.
I'm not an Xbox person, but I could tell you from the gameplay that I've seen on some of these games, they looked amazing. But they're like, nah, we're going to stop. Why? It's like everybody, I mean, people were excited. They wanted it. And all of a sudden, they just pulled the plug. Like,
what's the reason?
To me, it baffles me.
No, it's true. And there are certain franchises, and sometimes it's, again, and you're right, I think a lot of it is because, just like with movie studios, and Christopher Reeve, I remember, talked about this back in the 80s, and this is like the 80s, where he's like, the problem with studios is they're not run by creatives anymore. They're run by bean counters. They're, accountants, and, they're all about the numbers, but they have no idea about what it takes to make a good film, and that's why so much junk comes out. He talked about Marlon Brando, too. He's like, I was disappointed in Brando. Nintendo because he was just in it for a paycheck, and like Christopher Reeve was a serious actor, and he really just he spoke out against it. And I think that's the same problem, like you said, with the gaming companies. They're run by accountants basically. They're run by shareholders. They're not run by developers. That was a great thing that was Nintendo in like the early 2010s until he passed away. And we've talked about him before, and I feel so bad for not memorizing his name, but he was a great president. But he was a developer. He was a gamer at heart, and they came out with some of their best games, their best titles throughout that time. And yeah, I think you're right. I think it's hard to convince people of that, like shareholders. Like, look, just give it a little bit of time. Get somebody in there to lead the company who is a gamer at heart, who has that eye, just like Walt Disney. Yeah, businessman. His brother Roy did a lot of that. He was more of the creative guy, and he was, because once Snow White came out in 1937, he poured all that money for the most part back into productions of Pinocchio, Bambi, Fantasia, and those all cost a ton of money. That's why Disney didn't really make back and become like wealthy when it came to like Snow White. Like, oh, that set him for life. No, because as an artist, he put it back into the process. And I think with gaming developers, it's the same thing. Once they're there, they put it back in. They put the development time in. The timelines may stretch out, but that's because they want to make a game good. They just don't want to make it a release date. I don't know, but I think that's important, but it's hard to convince people of that.
Well, I mean, that's where they shoot themselves on the foot, especially big, well-known studios. Mm. They come out with the game, like, I don't know if it's okay to say the name, but Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
It was garbage when it came out.
So glitchy, too. I had to take a copy back, yeah.
And all of a sudden, X amount of time passes by. Oh, now, I get friends. Hey, Gabe, you got to give the game a try. It's really great. But how long did it take for it to become great?
You get tired. And other games come out, and you're like, I'm doing something else now, guys. I'm sorry, I can't do it. There is a thing about striking while the iron is hot. Yeah, and you get caught up in games that maybe are good. And then, maybe you'll pick it up later. Maybe you won't. But they missed their window.
But the problem is that the studio already has your money. They're giving you a game which is incomplete.
Yeah, it was.
So, are you getting your money's worth? Is my question. Is like, why should I have to pay for a game that's not complete because they're trying to push it out the door?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And Nintendo did that. Even Nintendo now has done that with certain properties. You were showing me because the Lego games are always very popular, and they're cute, they're fun. There's that aspect of play to it. And there was a James Bond series they were going to do in Lego, right?
They were going to adapt certain films into Lego games, have voice acting, everything like that.
You could have games for decades with all those films.
Yeah, but how tiring would it be at the same time, too?
Yeah, well, you put them out every couple of years. People buy it, and when the sales slump, they stop making them for a while, and you get a couple of good ones, or combinations of certain films, or maybe just the Connery films at once, the Roger Moore films, But companies like that would have been a cash cow. But sometimes even if it's not the president of the gaming company or of the gaming studio, sometimes licensing deals just fall through because either money doesn't come through, or like we were talking about a second ago, the window kind of passes or the window closes and people lose interest. Mm-hmm. That's just the society and the world we live in. We have short attention spans. Strike while the iron's hot, and sometimes people just leave deals on the table. And then, studio goes, nah, we've got other bigger things, or something, bigger comes along, and you're like, well, we need the space now. You should have taken it while you had the chance. So I think that's the case a lot of times. But going back to what we were talking about, like, all this, is about quality gaming, bang for your buck. But are you getting that, and are you especially getting that in an older system like the Switch 1, which is a great system, let's face it, for what it was. It wasn't the perfect system, but, after a while, it developed enough titles to be pretty solid. But is it really worth paying more for it? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, because the Switch 2 is finally running Switch 1 games the way they were supposed to be run.
Yeah.
And that's kind of disgraceful.
Which is ridiculous when you then consider that the Switch OLED is now $400 retail. For another $50, I could play the same games, even more games, and they look 100 times better.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes no sense.
Absolutely.
It's just throwing money away at that point.
Yeah.
And you can buy used ones still now for half the price.
Yeah. How much specifically?
like 200, 210,
Yeah. You can get a Switch Lite for what, $170?
In box, loose is like $130.
$130.
$130. Less than a PSP.
I mean, my God, it's amazing how, companies are like, well, we're going to charge more. No, I mean, you can, but why?
I think I have an idea as to why.
Why?
If you make the older system more expensive, it's going to force them to buy the new system.
That's true.
Yeah.
They're going. Oh, yeah. You know what?
Like
You're right.
literally what I was saying right now.
Yeah.
$400 for the OLED. Might as well just spend the extra 50 to go for the Switch 2.
Yeah, you're right. See, and that points to my point too, because if that's true, then they are desperate. They are just trying to force you to buy the other system.
Because what they have only now is games. People realize that they can just emulate MOD certain systems.
Yep.
And play them there without needing to buy anything.
I'm just saying the Steam Deck, and I'm just if you wanted to,
if you want to. I mean, we don't condone.
Well, no, of course not.
Yeah.
Don't do anything illegal that's going to get us canceled. I mean, get you in trouble. Just do your thing. But at the same time, no, it's true, and we're all kind of we're all the same mind. I think when it comes to this, but that was true. I never thought about that. Like you guys said, they are just trying to up the price of the old one because they want you to just go like, yeah, why not, and buy the new one. They want to try and edge out the competition, which is their old console, because you can actually hack the old consoles now, even the OLEDs, because that's a possibility, and that's going to get really popular for those who still have their OLEDs and their original Switches, even if it isn't a launch Switch 1. There are guys we know that we don't know anybody, but there are guys out there that can actually and have successfully hard modded those systems. In theory, yeah, it's all theory. None of it's it's out there.
Nothing's set in stone. I mean,
no,
probably
of course
it's out
not.
there, but how would we?
How would we know that?
We don't try
it's
that
crazy,
stuff.
but you can. But at the same time, in all seriousness, what? Well, anyway, in all seriousness, you can do that. You can absolutely do that now. But no, that makes a lot of sense, Gabe. Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing.
If I was thinking as a money grab, well, why don't we just raise the price and force them to buy this system? But people aren't buying it because of the new their license agreement that you sign. The only country right now fighting it is Brazil. Their consumer protection people. Yeah. They're saying no, you got to change it, and they give them, I'm not sure what time frame for Nintendo to respond back, because it sounds like kind of illegal, because now they want to. I don't know if it's true. It's just, I don't know how legit it is, but somebody posted the agreement and highlighted where they don't want you to sell your games.
And that's always been the problem. Yeah, they don't want you to be able to sell your games when it's done, because now, because there's the key card, or the card key, the game key, basically, that, if you copy your game and sell it, or if somebody copies your game and sells it to like GameStop or a used game store, and you buy the copy and this person plays their original, they're still tracking both codes, and the codes are going to be the same. So they brick both systems. That's what's been happening lately. We've been hearing a lot of that as well. And it's really kind of aggravating. And I think with all the pushback that social media gave the Switch 2, because there was a lot of flack it got, I think that it's hurting their projected sales. It's not really hurting their sales. It's hurting their projected sales, because they thought this thing was going to shoot off like a rocket. Right. And it really hasn't. It sold relatively well, but it's not the numbers that they want, that they thought they were going to have.
Yeah, like the first month or so, it's like 5.3 million. After that, what?
Yeah. Exactly. But what I told you, I said that before I go watch, because we talked about this at the shop, at the Retro Hack shop, the gaming shop, where we all met, because we did meet Gabe there as well. I met Gabe and all these gentlemen there, and we talk about this stuff. It's like the barber shop for guys. It's like another form of that. We talked about how initially people were going to, the numbers were going to be high in the first quarter. We kind of assumed that, and I said that's probably going to be because all the scalpers are buying as many as they can get to sell. And right after that, how many people scalpers tried to sell, Switch 2s to the shop? And you guys didn't take any of them.
No way. That same day it released, we had like 4 or 5 calls. Yeah. People asking us, you guys buy Switch 2? You guys buy Switch 2? It's just no.
Not do you guys have any. Do you guys buy them? Yeah.
On the day of release?
Yeah.
It's like, no, go to Target, pal.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I ordered them from. Yeah, that's where I got them all from. And, it's unfortunate. But again, we talked about that. We're like, watch, the first quarter is going to be all the scalpers, people that are buying multiple just to try and sell one at some point. But day one, when they're calling you guys, because you guys aren't going to give them top dollar, you can't.
We couldn't. It makes no sense. It would honestly just be against consumers as well.
Right. Because you'd have to charge how much?
How much? Yeah, how much more? Just to make like some sort of profit on it. We're not going to pay you $600.
And to have to sell it at least $750?
Yeah, no way. We'd look horrible.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what the heck? No, thank you.
Right.
No, thanks.
I mean, it's like you guys aren't eBay. You know, you don't do
We're
that.
not eBay.
You know, but it's kind of fascinating. But yeah, that was a great input. Yeah, that they're trying to get people to buy the Switch 2 by making the old Switch look less desirable, because you're like, why do you want an old last gen system? And
that we're gonna upcharge
that
you
is,
for.
especially since it costs so much more. I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense. It may be a conspiracy, but it's a conspiracy I agree with. Yeah. But there's another reason why we had Gabe here as we move on to our second segment. And, you know, he's an Atari guy from like the OG Atari stuff. So he's familiar with that. As a kid, he had a lot of the great Atari handhelds, a couple of them that were really kind of revolutionary for the time. And I wanted to talk about something like the Atari Lynx for a while, and the original systems, because Atari is the OG. You know, they are the ones that started this whole gaming thing. Now, they weren't the first, but they were the best, because they were one of the earliest systems that had removable cartridges, so you could play multiple games on one system. Magnavox had certain things. There was the, I think, Odyssey, or there were a lot of set-top, TV-top systems, but none of them that really hit home like the Atari. You have the 2600, the 2600, 5200, 5200, 7800. And the 78, unfortunately, is when I think it all started kind of going downhill. But what was the first Atari system you remember getting?
It was a 26.
So you had the OG, the 2600. Yeah. And what was the hype around it? Do you remember what the buzz was like when you know, around town?
It was just basically bringing, like Pac-Man. Mm-hmm. It's a horrible port, but...
Right. I mean, it was so popular.
Well, the thing is, it kept us from going to the arcade and spending, you know, it's like you spend a ton of quarters. I mean,
how much? Now, yeah, that's another topic. I want to know, how much would you estimate that you spent a day every time you'd go?
Depends on how much my mom had.
I mean, would you pay like $5, $10, $20 in quarters?
Yeah, between friends, I mean, it varies, because I would get like $5.
Right.
And depending on the game, because the difficulty, what you're gonna find out is that you can go to let's say I can go to the corner liquor store. Right. They have their set on medium. Mm-hmm. I can go to the pizza parlor place, and they cranked up the difficulty on it. So now your quarters are like flying.
They're just eating your quarters, man.
We kind of like got like, you know, the hint at one point. We're like, wait a minute, how come we can score higher points at the liquor store, yet when we go to the pizza place to, you know, sit down, have pizza, eat, have a nice lunch, we're dropping like $4. I mean,
each game is 25 cents, right? Yeah. What a trip. Yeah, I didn't realize that. So when you got it at home, it's like, forget those guys, man. We're going to go home and do it.
I mean, it wasn't the same graphics, but it was entertaining.
It was the same type of game. It was basically the same game, different graphics. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they used, back then the arcades still used CRTs. They used CRTs until recently. I think anybody who's into like cabinet arcades, they still use CRTs, right? Or they all moved over to like flat screen stuff?
I mean, the most modern stuff probably, because you don't, if you buy an original arcade, it's going to run you over $1,000, depending on like, you know, if it has the original marquees, right? You know, everything, it is going to still run you. But I mean, you can get a modded one, and you know, it's like you have 1,000 games.
10,000, yeah, you can really go nuts with that. That's true. And if you just love that stand-up arcade, see, growing up, I remember there was a Marie Callender's in Downey, in the city of Downey.
I remember.
I remember as a kid they had the tabletop arcades, where it was basically half the size of an arcade, like a stand-up arcade, but it was like a glass top table, and it was ancient at that point. But it was just really cool. As a kid, I just remember loving the way that looked. And I hated when people spilled things on it. But it was in like the front where you'd wait for your table until your table was ready. And that was always so neat to me. And I was always asking you guys, like, I think I asked you once, how much do like those go for?
They were pretty expensive back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, the arcade bar I used to hang out, the owner was really cool with me. And I think they were paying like $2,500 for certain arcades.
Wow.
And you're talking about 1980, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, but you got to remember, back then, that's what they generated, like, who knows how much money, because kids, 10, I mean, after 15. School, you stop at 7-Eleven, drop a couple dollars, go home, you know, and I mean, arcades were. I mean, unless it was like during summer was when it was. I mean, packed.
Air conditioning, sodas, yeah, games. That's amazing. Yeah, it's true. So, did your habits change once you got the 2600? You're like, will you spend like no time there, all the time at home, or what?
It was more like one of my best friends. Still talk to him. I would buy certain games and he would buy certain games. On the weekends, he would come to the house, spend the night. He would bring his games and start playing. But it's I mean, back then the bragging rights were not about trophies or who can run the game the fastest. The original games were set to 9,999. So if you could flip the score, you had bragging rights. You had the bragging rights. If like I said, certain games that was like on the 2600, for instance, Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
I was always one shot, just killing one guy to flip the score, and I could never do it.
Wow. So your score, oh, wow. So your score would not go over with every turn. You would have to actually beat that number or kill that number of guys.
Yeah, the game kept going, and if you lost your 3 lives, game over, unless you get like the extra life at a certain amount of points. But I got to the very end where not the end, because it would have continued even after you flipped the score. But I would have, I would have had the right to be like, hey, I'm like,
I did it. So one thing we were talking about with the Atari consoles is the like we would call them Joy-Cons now, but the joysticks. And after all this time, do they still work?
System still works. It's just you just gotta do the whole modding for the picture. Oh, I mean, back then we used to use the antenna prongs, to run them. But now it's like you gotta
alligator clips.
You have to be creative and get a mod to act. But I mean, now you can actually buy the new, like an Atari, which is HDMI. You can play your original cartridges. But for a person my age, it's like, do I really want to go back to the basics or stick with the new games?
Because you can emulate those on anything, and but there is something about the OG stuff, the OG equipment. There's something about the original hardware that is fun to play on, but it is kind of a pain unless you're a collector of everything vintage. And the thing is too, we talked about that I liked, is on the sticks there's no drift. So after 40, almost 50 years, the Atari consoles, the 2600, still doesn't have stick drift. Nintendo.
I just bought my Switch too. Oh, it has drift.
It comes with drift.
It comes with drift.
So
drift's extra.
Atari, after almost 50 years, still doesn't have stick drift. Nintendo. But anyway, sorry. More about that.
No, on the system though, like now you have cheat codes. You can go online.
Yeah. Oh, no internet back then. That's right.
Back then it was word of mouth. Like, I don't know how we figured certain things, like Pac-Man, for instance. When you turn it on and play it, if you flick the switch on and off real quick, when you go through the tunnels, Pac-Man would just fly through the walls wouldn't stop you. You can fly through. And it was just doing dumb things that we discovered, different methods. And I remember I left the game playing by itself, and I was like, oh, high score, woo.
So now what about the Atari 5600? Now, the 5600, wasn't it a direct competitor for Nintendo, the NES? Around that time, about 85?
It was a smaller market by that point. It was like Atari was kind of fading because Nintendo, at the arcade that I used to go to, they had the Super Mario Brothers.
Right.
In the arcade, but they had the double screen. They had a screen that where you normally play, but they would have like a screen above you so that people can see, because they were competing for like high scores, who could do this, who could discover different like secrets, and people would look and they're like, oh. The thing is, when I got the NES, the port was like, it was great. So for us, it's like, as it evolved, we kind of like stepped away from Atari. Like,
yeah. No, I was wrong. It wasn't 85. It was 82. So the 5600 came out in 82, and you had the 5200, right?
Yeah.
And was that a huge jump from the 26?
On games, like, the development started getting better. the controls on certain systems just, it's kind of like a hit and miss.
Right.
I mean, they were still good, but like, I remember I got the ColecoVision.
Oh wow.
The ColecoVision had horrible control. I mean,
I'll throw up a graphic. Yeah.
I couldn't get used to it.
Hmm.
And it looked like a phone pad dial. Like, you know, it had the numbers, the asterisk, the pound sign, but
Yeah.
for certain games. But trying to play it, it was like a small
Joystick.
Yeah, and 2 buttons on either side, which made it very uncomfortable.
Right.
You have to be a computer scientist to be able to play that. So by 85, you can say that Atari was kind of dying and dead in terms of their consoles. Because, yeah, Nintendo also did something very interesting with their games because they didn't want a lot of fluff and a lot of junk gaming. So unlike Atari, which, you know, third parties were making games for their systems like crazy, without their approval, Nintendo put a stop to it. They're like, no, we don't want that. We don't want a lot of junkware. We don't want a lot of that. What we want is games that we approve, you know, and the way we're going to do it is they put a chip. They put a mod chip, or not a mod chip, but there's a chip in there, a security chip that had to be put in officially licensed Nintendo games. That's why they had that gold Nintendo stamp on their boxes and stuff to make sure it was an authentic product. And it just became part of the packaging. Yeah. But, you know, a Nintendo game, a cartridge that was not officially licensed, would not play in the system. And Atari's like, damn it, why didn't we think of that? You know, and by then it was already kind of too late because I think Nintendo even told Atari and all them that you can only put out 5 games a year, you know, as opposed to just a bunch of junk or, you know, subpar things or a bunch of games that were just okay. You had to have, you know, the best of your games. And, you know, it was after that Atari just kind of, you know, it couldn't really compete anymore. But then I wanted to talk about, well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to add,
Yeah.
it just makes me wonder what kind of jackass thought Wall Street Kid would be a good idea. Have you ever played Wall Street Kid, Gabe? It's a game that teaches you about the stock market.
Okay.
It's real. Like,
That's
that's
it.
the whole
That's
thing.
the whole
it's
game?
just the stock market
Well,
for kids.
it was the 80s, though, so that kind of makes sense.
I mean, they had games like what he's talking about, but they had one where you would set up like at a baseball game, you would set up a stand. You sell hot dogs, you sell drinks, you sell this, and you would put your own prices, and you would see like,
$1 billion.
you would see like after X amount of time, you would see like how much things would like how much you made,
Right.
and from there you would take it and buy your restock, buy ketchup, buy the hamburger buns, buy the hot dog buns, buy the
That's interesting, actually.
That sounds more interesting than the
Wall
stock
Street,
market
yeah.
one, yeah.
And that game was, it had us like, you know, like
Yeah.
it was interesting, but
Right.
the problem with the Atari is that our school ended up with getting Apple computers.
Oh, okay. Apple II? The Apple IIs? With the floppy drive. Oh, man.
And when that came out, I mean, we couldn't afford it.
Right. No, of course. Yeah.
So as far as buying Atari games, we went to the next best thing. We would stay after school to learn about computers. And what we figured out is that I read a magazine. I can't for the life of me remember, but it would show you how to the floppy disk. I would buy like Karateka. That game was, for us, it was awesome. I mean, now when you look at it, you're like, but back in the day, you use a hole punch on the floppy disk. You hit a command, and you'd go into the actual BIOS, and you can just hit unlock wherever they lock the game. You unlock it.
Wow.
Pop it in, copy it to the computer. Your friend brings a floppy disk. You copy it to his. And I was making like copies for friends so that they wouldn't have, so we wouldn't spend money. We would buy one game, and we just crack it, go in.
Wow.
Everybody had the game, and like I said, we would pretend like we were going to learn about computers, but we're actually hacking and doing other things that we're supposed to.
That's crazy. So it's basically you were just like in an early type of developer mode for that thing. Those kind of games. That's crazy. Did you ever charge for any of those? No, we're not going to get in that. We don't want any legal action from Apple because you know how litigious they are.
Right.
That never happened. It was only for free.
Steve Jobs is dead.
Just a reminder. That's crazy. Now, a few years go by, and there's the revolution of the Game Boy. And the one thing about Nintendo that we've talked about before is they are experts at using old technology in new ways, or at least old technology with new marketing, because everything in the Game Boy was old tech at that point. It wasn't cutting edge at all. Their marketing was. Atari, on the other hand, saw an opportunity, and they're like, yeah, let's do something like that, but better. And let's face it, they all wanted to be Nintendo. Every company wanted to be Nintendo at that point, and Atari wasn't immune from that. And, that's what you do in the business. You compete. And they put out the Atari Lynx, which was a revolutionary system that had a color screen. And while Nintendo's was black and white, basically black and white, or just like, khaki green or whatever it is.
Khaki green.
Yeah, whatever. And it could also be used by lefties or righties, because you could just flip it and the screen would flip, digitally. And it was a superior system. And you did have that, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the Atari Lynx compared to like the Game Boy.
Well, certain games like Zybot, it's like they made a good arcade port out of it.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't like exact, but graphically wise, it was great. Same thing with Xenophobe. Other systems had it, but the graphics, gameplay just didn't hit the same.
Right. And do you think that goes back to like storytelling and how they just like hit or miss, didn't really focus on that as much? They're like, well, the graphics are great. That should be everything. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the library wasn't like big.
Robust enough.
Same thing with the Atari Jaguar.
Right.
It had good titles, but it just seemed like Atari was stuck.
7800 didn't do well. I think that was kind of their downfall, because they were doing relatively well with the 5200, and then Nintendo, the NES came out and just kind of crushed them. Then they did the 7800, which couldn't compete, and then like you said, the Jaguar was in the 90s, right? Isn't that the one with like that huge controller that looked like a monster prehistoric BlackBerry, And it looks so complicated, and I've seen images of the graphics of some of the games. And it was trying to like be polygonal. It like some of the fighting games tried to be like Tekken, but looking like Mario 64, but worse. And then like the responsiveness wasn't good. It was a miss. It was unfortunately a miss. But the Atari Lynx was actually a good system.
Yeah.
I don't know what the battery life was. Do you remember?
Well, I mean, depends on your playing habits, I guess you could say. Because, I mean, batteries were freaking expensive. That thing, batteries back then wouldn't last you that long. Unless you plugged it into the wall, then you could play.
But you could jack into the wall. And so you could do that, and, that's, pretty cutting edge. And again, it didn't succeed. It was unfortunately another failure in Atari, one of the last nails in its coffin. I think it was probably one of the last quality systems Atari actually put out that was an actual quality competitor to Nintendo. And eventually Sega was what Atari wanted to be. And this has been brought out in documentaries before, but Atari would have loved to be Nintendo, they would have loved to have been Sega, which was a direct competitor. But again, Sega had the characterization. Sonic had attitude, and he was like their Mario. And then the just biting commentary in the advertisements. Sega does what Nintendo don't. So they were just like really. They had that attitude and that edge, and Atari just unfortunately couldn't hack it.
Now here's my thing. Sorry.
No. I was done. You go ahead.
What's it called? What do you know about like the like canceled or like harder to find like Atari systems like the Cosmos, for example?
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is a lot of guys from my generation are probably few of us left.
You're Gen X.
So, I mean, as far as heavy gaming, I doubt, like I said, anybody's going to go into those systems. I mean, even if you're a hardcore collector, games on Nintendo, PlayStation, even the new systems, there are games that are worth far more than any Atari game.
Right. Would you say you guys, your generation is less nostalgic than millennials or Gen Z?
Yeah.
It's easier for you guys to just go like, yeah, it's all right. It's not worth my time.
Pretty much. I mean, like all my friends, they'll game, but on PC, certain games.
Right.
And
you made fun of me for PC gaming. What the hell, man?
I make fun of everybody.
That's true. That's fair. That is fair. But yeah, and we've talked about this before. You can emulate all those old systems so easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess it's a convenience factor. I think the millennials and Gen Z kind of have more of an attachment to physical things, and just things in general.
Well, I mean, like with the 2600, I mean, everybody blamed ET for the downfall of Atari, but that wasn't it.
Who do you blame?
It's Atari themselves. They weren't making good financial decisions. They lost a lot of money, but you can't blame one video game for the downfall. That's just not plausible.
Because they didn't give them enough time to develop a good ET
They give
game.
them a few, I don't know how many months to make the game, to make it come out for Christmas, worst of all.
Right.
And that game, once you fall into a pit, I remember it was really hard to get out of it because you would just keep on being in a loop of just falling and falling and falling.
Yeah, I remember seeing that clip. Yeah, that would have been so frustrating. The graphics are hard enough on an Atari system to make them out.
I mean, I beat the game, but still, it's like I couldn't see the
point.
Yeah, it's like, why are you blaming him? Which really sucked for his family because they got so much heat for it.
Yeah, because the company is going to try and dodge blame as much as possible, which is unfortunate. Yeah, that's terrible. But yeah, it was after that in the 90s was the downfall. So what happened to all your Atari stuff?
I kept some stuff, but it's like I said, it's you get to a point where it's just gathering dust.
Right. Until there's a new wave and it gets expensive again, which happens a lot.
I mean, like I had my stuff, everything was working, and I sold it. I mean, I can pay $50 and I can get all 3 systems. I can get the Atari Lynx games. I can get the Jaguar games. $50.
Crazy.
PS4, PS5. You can get all. I can get all my games back for $50.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because they're in compilations. PS2 did it. PS1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, they've all done compilations of all those Atari games. So that's how Atari stayed in the game, though. It stayed in the game through licensing.
I get it.
I mean,
stayed in the game.
See what I did there, but I didn't realize I was doing. But no, that's that was. That was an era for sure. But it's interesting how certain companies will take what you've done, better it, and then just beat you at your own game. I didn't mean to do that either. But
I know, 2 in a row.
Right? I
didn't see him unintentionally.
Hot tonight. But
you're always hot.
Were you sad? Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Were you sad when Atari kind of went down, or were you just like,
we were like, at that point, we're over it. It's not like today where people have hardcore PlayStation, hardcore Xbox, or...
Right.
For us, it was like,
next thing.
We were outside on our bikes. We were out,
touching grass.
We were out going to the pool. We were out doing other stuff besides video games. So for us,
I didn't really have much video games growing up, so I had to use my bike and I had to do all that. But I still
never
like
learned how to ride one.
Ever?
Never.
Right now, let's go right outside.
All right.
Come on, Junior, we'll do this.
Okay.
Well, maybe after the let's wait till after the show.
Fucking die.
regular seat,
banana seat.
Hey.
No seat.
God, you people.
Yeah. What do you mean, you people? I mean, my mixed background can go anywhere with that. Let me see.
Well, then all the above.
Oh man. But we do a segment here that's usually the final segment. It's about modding. Usually I like to talk about modding and modifications made to systems. And coming from Gen X, it's kind of funny. You get people that are Gen Xers that were always seen as rebellious and the toughest gen and all that, and they fall on multiple sides of the political spectrum. But in general, when it comes to hacking as a political statement, hacking as a way of, giving it to the man, what do you think about that? Do you see it as a rebellious thing?
I guess it depends on the circumstance, I suppose. I mean, not all hacking is bad. I mean, some people think like, well, we're losing money. It's like, well, if the game is 10 years old, as an example, nobody's buying it.
Right.
Is copying it really gonna make a difference?
Right.
I mean, nobody's gonna buy it.
No.
If it's a brand new game now, then that's a whole different issue. But where I have a problem is that I remember companies saying that they were going to make digital games cheaper but they're not cheap. They're making you spend retail price. You're not getting it a box. You're not getting the instruction manual. You're not getting the cartridge or the labor to make the stuff.
Right.
So is hacking? I mean, like at that point, like I'm getting screwed
Right.
out of money on a game that I don't even own.
Right.
They can pull the plug with the licensing, and my money just went out the window. So
Yeah, because they're not going to give you a refund. Yeah, but there's all the complaining about like, oh, well, it costs so much to make a box and artwork and the labels and the cartridge or the disc. But like, if you're telling me that you're giving me the same game with none of that for just $10 cheaper,
that is the same price.
or the same price, where's the truth? So then you're just charging me all this money for what? If it costs you nothing
Just
to actually
the
physically
rental.
you're charging me that much to rent the game. Yeah, because and we always say this. I always say this. I don't want to bring anybody down with me, but if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't theft.
I stand by that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
true.
I think in my rebellious little way that hacking is a type of rebellion. I think the people that hack the systems are more about rebellion because they're like, oh, because I'm telling you, with the Switch 2, when they said, well, you can't hack this system, it's unhackable, the hackers are like, hold my beer,
Hold my
right? Hold my Wii controller, my Wii remote, and
Wiimote.
let's stop there. But and they started mapping the boards very quickly, and I've seen certain small YouTubers post about it, and they're posting all the specific documentation, how they're already like dropping information into the Switch 2, and they're working twice as hard to hack it. So the more you tell people not to do something, the more they're going to do it. And we always say on the show that if you give somebody a good quality game for a reasonable price, not dirt cheap, of course, because companies have to make money. We get it. But, if you're just charging a bunch of money for crap that people don't own, then of course other people are going to start hacking them because they're not going to see any value in owning anything, because that's what you're breeding in people. Like, well, you're making me pay all this money for a digital game. I'm not getting anything physical about it that I used to enjoy about games, and it's not really mine. You can take it away without giving me any of my money back. And I stand against that, and that's why I think, hacking is a rebellious thing, and it does have its place, because a lot of times what happens is certain hacks and mods that were in some Mario games were making, I think, like certain modders were doing certain things and making their own levels in Super Mario games, and then Nintendo actually used some of their what they came up with, like one of the like blowing bubbles and then getting inside the bubble, or some feature that hackers created, hacking developers created, that Nintendo's like, we're good, this is actually really good, and they just
Super Mario Maker.
Right, exactly, right, that's what it was, right?
That's literally what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fascinating, but I think there's some valid answer or valid questions when it comes to hacking and modding and all this stuff and piracy, but not to the extent people, or companies, I should say, try to highlight. I think it's a much different situation that they're like, oh, hackers are evil, piracy is terrible. But it's like, no, because at the end of the day, I think it makes companies better, because it makes them put out better quality products that people are going to want.
Oh, for me, it's more about like you get treated how you treat others.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, the whole digital, you're paying full price for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
If the companies ever shut down the server, as an example, and let's say your hard drive takes a dump,
Yeah.
and you have to download them again, well, where are you going to download them from?
Right.
You can replace your system, because there's there's going to be always people that are going to sell their old systems.
Right.
I can always replace the system, but the games, like, I just lost how much money? I mean, that's like money invested.
Yeah.
If you have the hard disk, you can always pop it in and play.
Yeah, it's true.
So, I mean, like you said, is piracy really, it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. And, people do it out of necessity sometimes. Some people do it out of laziness or greed. I get it. But at the same time, overall, I think there's a net good when it comes to hacking and modding systems, because you learn a lot, and you're able to do a lot more and open these systems up to what they could really do. It's almost like added development time, because these systems are open up opened up in ways that maybe the developers didn't even see, because they don't have an eternity to work on these systems, but hackers have a lot of time, and there's a lot of them, so of course they're going to have fun with these things and mess with them and push them to their limits.
Well, it's like the game Skyrim.
Okay.
They opened up the game to modders. You can download mods for that game and they're free. The original creator gets, they get paid as well.
Right, which is cool.
But they open the software for people to mod it.
Yeah.
I mean, graphically, some of the mods make the graphics like so much better.
And that's the thing. And it's about the experience too. I think that hackers and modders, I should say, independent developers, I think that a lot of them are about the experience. Like, like you were saying, they made the gameplay better. They just didn't make a bunch of cheats. They made it better for everyone, and that was their goal. You know what I mean? And that, of course, is a net good. And yeah, I mean, that's something more companies should do. It's like Star Trek. I think it was the original series. Star Trek is one of the only TV shows in history to have an open submission policy. It doesn't mean they're going to take your script, but you can send it, to start. You used to be able to send them to Star Trek series that were on the air at the time. And they had, yes, like a warehouse full of scripts, but, that's a great policy because it's very much of and for the people. So, yeah, that's really cool. And it shows you what people are going to do if you allow them to. If you're going to let them, kind of play with it a little bit, if you're going to let them, I'm going to do that again. That sounded terrible. I know Gabe was holding back. If you're going to let people experiment on your tech and your games, and see what it can really do, you're going to get some good results. You're going to get some terrible results too. But, at the same time, it's going to be a mixed bag, but you might see brilliance. And, again, the true nature of people is brought out in what they do, and making the gameplay better for everybody else is a net good. That's a great thing.
That is a great thing.
And you think more companies would do that? They'd be like, hey, let's give these people a chance.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess people are just afraid that these companies are more so afraid that they'll become irrelevant. Maybe. If it's like if people can do this, if anybody else can do this, what does that say about us? That makes us, not as special.
Right. No, and it's unfortunate, but I think you're right. I think there's a lot of if they're going to cut out the middleman, us, what's the point? But I mean,
exactly.
How many people are going to be able to develop a new Grand Theft Auto game? I mean, you might be able to come up with some fun stuff.
Just commit crimes in real life.
Exactly, and most people do to varying results. We're not encouraging anything, just so that is satire. But yeah, people are very talented out there, and you can make a whole movie in your garage, so to speak. You can run anything out of your house. You can, if you're creative enough, you can make some really creative things. You've introduced me to very independent games that are like Downfall, and just these little simple games, but they're fun. And it's the experience, and that is great. But I mean, all bigger companies have to do is accept and welcome.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Downwell. Excuse me. So Downwell was the game.
That's the one. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Downfall was a movie about Hitler. Sorry.
Yeah.
Downwell is a very simple 8-bit game, and you're basically just falling the whole time trying to avoid stuff and shooting stuff. Yeah. It's extremely simple indie game, but really fun.
And there's a lot too. There's a lot of love poured into it because it has a lot of callbacks to whether it be locales, maybe character designs for some of the creatures, even the look of it, whether it be the colors or the style.
Right.
I think is really neat because there's Virtual Boy, Game Boy, Atari type colors. It's just cool.
Yeah,
it's
you can switch up the colors of the whole thing. It's really great. And again, it goes back to indie developers, and if larger companies look to them, they would have a lot more. I think it would be a better creative space for gamers and game developers in general. And I think the way the future is, because of hacking and modding, I think it is going to be more like the indie titles that are going to get real popular, whether the big guys like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Just got to let people play with it.
No. Jesus. One flub, and I just got to watch my mouth on this podcast. I just got to watch what I say. Stop! I will fire you right now.
We're getting paid.
Not anymore.
What? Oh man!
Surprise! Oh man!
Cookies.
Well, you were talking about something earlier, Gabe, when it comes like there was no internet. We've had this conversation before. And speaking about hacking and modding, there's a lot of tutorials online about like, cheats and all that. And you're Gen X. Y'all didn't have that. You had like interesting things where you turn the things on and off and kind of trick the system. But, what's your overall view of like tutorials online, which are kind of like hacks and cheats, walkthroughs?
That was, like I said, it was word of mouth or on the local, like the penny saver kind of, those type of ad, I guess, paid for ad. You would find groups that, group for, for this or group for that. And you would go to certain clubs or whatever, and you would find out stuff where you're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Oh, we didn't know how to do that.
Interesting.
I mean,
what do you think about like YouTube walkthroughs now? Because it's so easy.
It's not about easy. It's about who you trust.
Okay.
Because a lot of stuff is garbage. I hate to say it, but a lot of the stuff they post is like, I don't see how some of it gets through.
Right.
Back then, it was basically somebody you talk to, a group of people. There's kind of like a club, I guess you could say. It's a club.
They're called gangs, Gabe. You can say gangs.
But you would learn stuff, and then you would just take it to school, and then somebody else would take it to the other friend goes to a different school, and it was just like it just kept going.
That's so interesting. It built such a community of just trying to solve these puzzles, basically these games. And so, do you think that like online YouTube tutorials kind of they do the opposite of bringing kids together? They kind of push them apart to do their own thing, and so you don't have to be part of a physical community anymore.
It's not a community. Well, I don't consider it a community because, I mean, let's say, for instance, we come up with a brilliant way to do an upgrade to a video game.
Mm-hmm.
How many other people are going to copy that same video, use different wording, and try to put it out as their own? Well,
what I meant, I'm sorry, I probably misspoke, but what I meant was like how you guys used to get together from schools and find cheats and find ways through. So like now kids can just look online by themselves, you know what I mean? It doesn't have that same level of community building that it used to, when you guys used to get excited, like, oh my God.
For us, it was mainly after school.
Right.
Would meet at the park, or like I say, would go to the local pizza,
place.
Hang out, talk about, do you know anything new as far as this game or that game? And it, like I said, it's just word of mouth. I mean, for us, it was fun. It's more like kind of like exploration, I guess. Because like, hey, my friend, you don't know who, your other buddies are, friends are. Right. And so all of a sudden now their buddy told them how to do this or how to do that. And it came to one point where I don't know who did it, but it was hilarious.
Okay.
He made the Street Fighter game for I think it was for the
Sega?
Super NES, I believe.
Super NES, yeah.
They made their own, and they called it Street Fighter. Now, you can imagine what happens.
Okay.
But nothing but females.
Oh, God. This was just one of your buddies?
Somebody made the game and started making copies. I don't know how they got a hold of it. I don't know if it was if they bought it from maybe I couldn't give you the source.
So you don't know if they made the game or if they bought it already pre-done.
But it was basically females fighting, and whoever lost, they would lose their tops.
Oh wow!
Stuff like that.
This was 16-bit. This is at 16-bit level.
And it was, I mean,
you guys had it rough.
I mean, at the time, you're not going to play it when your parents are around, obviously.
Right, of course. That's almost like the equivalent, I think, maybe a little better than having like the scrambled porn channel on your cable package, and then just like, I think that's a boob. Is that? No, it's a knee. It's not.
Letting it load and load.
Right, and then like old porn.
Yeah.
But there were like hilarious. Some underground games like that. I mean, when everybody's in that game, I mean, everybody like, we discovered the Ark.
Right. Oh. I can imagine that game got passed around more than a game like that would get passed around at a party.
Well, I mean, until certain parents caught
Oh, I'm sure.
Then it's like, where'd you get the game? And I don't know. I don't know what's going
Found
on.
it on the street. It's weird. I don't know.
But at Toys R Us.
If you can see my collection over here is rated PG.
Right?
Yeah.
Hide it with the other games. That's fascinating. So that's another modding thing that people would do. You get the underground modding community doing quirky little things like that back in the day. That was in the 90s. Man, that's fascinating. I never heard of that, but that's really interesting. But, Gabe, we wanted to thank you for being on the show. We wanted to talk to you about Atari, and if there's anything, and, bitch about Nintendo, which we did. But if you ever want to come back, please let us know if you have anything gaming-wise you want to talk about or, that we're going to talk about that you're, really passionate about. We'd love to have you back, but thank you so much for being with us.
Yes,
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Not yet.
But it'll happen. There'll be something that pisses you off and you want to come back on the show, and we'd love to have you because it's a lot of nerd rage here, but it's the best kind. The kind that's shouted into a microphone. But thank you so much for tuning in to Gamers at the End of the World. Once again, I am Ty Justice.
I'm JCPR.
And this has been our special guest, Gabe. Wave to the camera, Gabe. Don't give him the finger. All right.
Which one?
Thank you so much again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.